It seems that the coronavirus crisis has caused people to ask big questions about the meaning of life and why we're here. And one of those particular questions that's being asked is there anything after life? Is anything happen to me once I die? Research in America is showing that huge numbers of people are saying that their faith is being made stronger in the middle of this, and very small numbers saying it's being made weaker. Here in Ireland, the research is showing that people are particularly asking questions about life after death. And really interestingly in that, the young adult generation seems to be the ones who are asking mostly those questions about what happens to me when I die? Do I live on in some way? Sometimes we're caused to think like this and ask questions like this. And these are good times for us to stop and to reflect and say, what's my life all about? Tolstoy was a Russian philosopher and thinker and writer. And he says this, kind of depressed as he's thinking about the world. What will come of what I'm doing today or tomorrow? What will come of my whole life? Why should I live? Why wish for anything or do anything? It can also be expressed thus. Is there any meaning in my life that the inevitable death awaiting me does not destroy? He was a cheery guy, Tolstoy, but he's really saying, all that I hope for, all that I do, all that I dream of, does it have any meaning if death is just the end? And I wonder what options are available to us as we're thinking about this. And I want us to think about whether there's any reason to believe in life after death. It seems there are 6 kind of main options when you think about this. The first is the materialistic one, and simply that says is you are the sum of your material, your physicality. There is nothing more to you than that. Somebody like Richard Dawkins, he believes that, and he expresses life in this way. He says the universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. That's the materialistic viewpoint. Second one is paganism. Paganism has an idea of some sort of shadowy, ghostly self that we get. Third, you might go for or investigate reincarnation. And what reincarnation says is that we have multiple lives until we finally reach an enlightened stage. Fourthly, pantheism is this idea that we have this energy and we're all part of the energy of the universe, and that when we die, we actually just kind of go back to the universe and our energy carries on in a different way, but it continues to carry on. Fifthly, some people believe in the immortality of the soul, where the soul is this completely separate unit to the body and the soul lives on in some way where it's not connected to a body. And then sixthly, which is what Christianity believes and what I've come to believe, is in resurrection. And it's the resurrection of both the soul and the body, that our souls and our bodies go on eternally, and we're united to a new body that doesn't decay or break or wear down or die. These are the views, but is there any reason to believe in the ones that say that our souls live on? And I think it's important to say this. Science is wonderful. Science is a brilliant thing, but you may have heard it said that science and religion aren't compatible. And I love science, and I always want to say to people, really say if that's true. This idea that the only truth that is acceptable is what can be proven by the scientific method, where you got to say to yourself, well, how do you prove that? It's impossible to prove that, and it's a self-defeating statement. Now, science is just one weapon in our armory of answering the questions about the truth of life. Peter Kreeft is a well-known philosopher, a brilliant philosopher at Boston College, and he makes 4 arguments about the nature of the soul, and 4 arguments to at least get us to begin to say, is there life after death? The first argument he talks about is an argument from authority, and it's very simple. He simply says, the wisest people in history have believed in life after death, then at least you should consider it. Don't write it off just because you think it's not right. an awful lot of very intelligent people believe it. So you should at least look into it. One of the people I really love to read is Francis Collins. He is the head of one of the most important scientific centers in America, actually the one that's heading up at the moment the fight against the coronavirus, the National Institute for Health in America. And he talks about how he became a Christian, having for the first 2 decades of his life just refused to even think that there's a possibility that there could be a God out there, or that there could be, my soul could live on after I die. And he said, I was just so arrogant to not even ask the question, what does the evidence say about this? So Kreeft's first argument is the argument from authority. The second one is this, is an argument from the conservation of energy. There's a scientific principle that says that energy is never wasted, it never dies. And Kreeft says that it's clear that ourselves, who we are as people, our personhood, is a kind of energy. And he says, well, it would defy a scientific principle of energy to say that when we die, that self, that sense of self just ends, that it must go somewhere, it must live on in some way. A third argument, or at least way into this question of whether there's life after death, is the question of the innate desire for justice in the world. Virtually everybody has a sense that justice should be done. And when justice is not done, when somebody has had something awful happen to them and the perpetrators of that justice are never found, never convicted, never pay the penalty for that, there's something in us just says this is wrong. And we've got to conclude something in when we're faced with injustice. We've got to either say justice is an illusion and it's made up, or we've got to say that in some eternal cosmic way, justice is done. Christians believe that the Bible says that God is the one who does justice, that no evil goes unpunished or has a blind eye turned to it. That God is the one who is just and a good judge. The fourth argument then, is a series of arguments that he makes about the nature of man, and I particularly like these, that our nature says that we're eternal. The first one is this. It's primitive man's argument from dead cow. Okay, and what that says is, Kreeft says, listen, even primitive man could come across a dead cow, knowing what a live cow is like and seeing a dead one, and they can see that something has changed. That a dead cow and a live cow are just so profoundly different. It speaks to the reality of life, the actuality that life is something, that when it's gone, it's so clear that something real has disappeared. I remember the first dead body I saw. It was of somebody that I had seen alive a few days earlier. And when I saw this dead body, I was just really struck by how not that person this body was. Their life had left them. They were gone. And what was left was, as people often say, is this shell. Secondly, then, there's Descartes' argument, and it's a simple one. He said simply, I think, therefore I am. The proof that I have personhood is in the fact that I think and I have consciousness, that I am a force, a thing, that I'm not just physical things, the sense of who I am. Thomas Nagel is professor of philosophy and law emeritus at New York University, and he's an atheist. He's not a Christian or somebody of faith, but he says the conscious experience is a profound problem for people who say that our lives end. We end at death. He says conscious experience, thought, value, and so forth are not illusions, even though they cannot be identified with physical facts. That our sense of ourselves is so profound that it speaks to the truth of our existence. That's secondly. Thirdly, then, Kreeft talks about the daily experience of real magic. He says we encounter beauty every day in magic, or in art and culture and sport and music. We encounter this beauty, and that this is magic. He says it's just so enthralling, and the way that we relate to it and are in awe of it tells us something about our eternal nature. and says that because the alternative is simply to say that these are illusions of the mind when we appreciate beauty or we want love. All of those things are illusions if we don't have eternity within us. And then finally, there's the argument of the fulfillment of desire, the argument of the nature of man, that we long for things. We long to have ourselves filled by love and by beauty and by experience. And that if we're, and C.S. Lewis talks about if we're not able to fill that longing by something in the world, it tells us that we must be made for another world. So these are Kreeft's 4 arguments. A Christian would want to say that if you're saying, yeah, I really do, I'm beginning to think, or at least want to question whether there's life after death, whether my soul is a real thing. Christians would encourage you to say, well, have a look at the Bible, and particularly have a look at the 4 accounts in the Bible of Jesus Christ. And even more specifically, look at the bits in those accounts of him rising from the dead. Jesus said that our souls are eternal, that we either go to be in the place eternally with our Father, who's God, or we go not to be with him eternally. And then in a sense, we have a choice. And the Gospels say, and Christianity was founded on the belief that a true event happened, that this person, Jesus, who they claimed was God, rose from the dead. And I suppose the place, if you want to begin and say, well, where does Christianity lead to us in this, is to ask that question. Is that a reliable and truthful account of something that happened? Those 4 accounts, are they reliable? Are they truthful? And can they be believed? Hundreds of thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of people have come to believe that that is true, that we are eternal beings, that we were made for heaven, our true selves are to be with God the Father, our Maker, and that he came into the world in the person of Jesus, and he defeated death by rising from the dead, and it's possible for us to defeat death and rise from the dead when we put our trust in him.